So let's get started with today's topic. I've got a question from another viewer. They've asked me a question about AI art and ownership and copyright. Now, as you guys may know, AI art has been rampant lately. Not only AI art, but AI systems that literally write essays for you or write letters for you or do research for you. All these AI systems are now popping out of the woodworks. It's a fascinating field. And I'm so lucky to be at, I would say at the forefront of the field. So I've gotten so many questions about this topic. Now, a lot of artists are talking about their art being stolen by AI systems. Now, stolen is a very particular word, okay? We're talking about AI systems that use databases, i.e., a ton of different models and training models by using images from millions and millions of different people. And that includes artists. Now, it just so happens a little AI art tends to spit out things in a more stylistic version of whatever they're trying to emulate, or in this case, whatever they're modeled after. And artists have been up in arms about AI systems taking their art, learning from their art, and spitting out things that are comparable, similar, in the same style as their artwork. And so they are up in arms about this whole, we should have rights to our own artwork. We should be compensated for AIs creating artwork using our artwork as a training model. A whole slew of things. Now, the question is, how does this impact us as a society? This is one of those things where, from an artist's point of view, I can see what they're talking about. I can see the frustration and the stress that they're going through, the troubles that they're experiencing with this. But as a person who's a data analyst, a person who works with machine learning and models, and someone who's trying to build their own AI system, I also see the complexities behind what it means to own something. Now, for most of you who don't know, I'm trying to patent Evie. I'm trying to get a patent for her right now, but AI law and AI patents are just so new. They're incredibly, incredibly new. So new, in fact, that there's just no infrastructure in place to really lock down what it means to own something. For example, to patent Evie, my own creation, how do I prove that I own it? Step number one, how do I prove that I own it? Okay. Step number two, how do I prove what I own? And by what I own, I mean things like, do I own A, B, and C parts of the code? Do I own certain open source parts of the code? Do I have licensing for certain parts of the code? And finally, the third part, if things change, and this is the most important one, if things change, is it still the same system? Now, a lot of software developers, when they update, when they patch things, right, they have a certain semblance of, like, their patent spans a certain semblance of what their idea is, and they reiterate on that patent. They add to that patent. They add more features to their service. They add more features to their products and their code. With AI systems, it's a little bit different, because now we're talking about a system that evolves in sometimes a way that we cannot predict. It's like saying, I want to make a grocery store and I want to own a grocery store. I'm using it as an example because it's easy to understand. And in my grocery store, I want to sell apples. Okay. Now, what if one day my apples started mutating? They started growing different things. They started turning different colors. They started changing in a way that I never predicted. And when I go back to my patent, when I go back to my service agreement, or when I go back to my original idea, it says Kenny wants to own a grocery store to sell apples. If things change, is he still selling apples? How much do they consist of the original design or the original apples? And if things change, like I said, the most important thing of all, do you still own it? Is it still protected? Now, these are the things that really affect AI systems and patent law, because it is almost impossible sometimes to figure out what's going to happen, what's going to be spit out, what's going to be generated through an AI system, because it's using models and is trying to create things that literally don't exist. Or it's trying to do things that literally don't exist. Or sometimes there's bugs that happen and they're just generated literally out of nowhere. And sometimes they're happy accidents and sometimes they're big ass messes. But by law, do you still own it? Is it the same system? This is the new world that we as humans are trying to navigate through. There's no precedence in any law to state what happens in this case. Now, back to the original question, we're talking about art. And now as an artist, you're like, that artwork looks like mine. And by law, you can say a lot of things look like you. A lot of things look like yours. A lot of things are similar in a lot of things in regards. But when it comes to the legal system, there are some complications. Here's the thing that I question this. If I made an AI art system and I used 2 different pieces of art as a reference point to train my model, okay? I used your artwork and I used my artwork. Okay, that's the basis of it. But you, as the person on the other side, have to, number 1, prove that you own the art. The same way I have to do with my patents, you have to go through the same legality, the legal precedence that has been created so far, that we currently have as humans. Not that great though. So you have to prove that this art is yours. Once you've proven that this art is yours, you have to prove how much of it you actually own. Now, if you took inspiration from others, if you took a style from someone else, if you drew a Gengar, if you drew a Pikachu, for example, do you own that IP? That's the second thing. So how much of your own artwork do you own? And lastly, if it is changed, and this is the big problem, if it is changed, how much of it do you own? If an AI system took my artwork, your artwork, smashed them together, and spat out an image, how much of it is yours? This is the tricky gray area in this moment. Now, there are a couple ways to prove that it's something that's yours. One of them is through pixel calculation. That YouTube uses this. You guys see this all the time with copyright stuff, where it counts pixels and it tracks pixels. And if the pixels line up in a specific sequence, in a specific order, in a specific color, you can prove that it's originally yours. You can prove that it belonged to you originally, or if it's very, very similar in that regard and by how much degree. But when it comes to something conceptual, when it comes to something that an AI creates, generally speaking, guys, it is not pixel identical. So now it's very subjective. Now it's saying this artwork looks very, very similar to mine through what I see. But the law doesn't work that way. The law needs to be proven. So you can say as much as you want, but unless you have concrete proof that it's been like duplicated, that is when it changes. Now, I know a lot of artists are like, oh yeah, I can probably prove it and stuff. I also ponder you this. As someone who works with machine learning, as someone who works with training models and trying to collect data, I know how much data and samples are required. I know how massive databases get. To do a simple hand tracking thing requires thousands and thousands and thousands of samples. Can you imagine what these AI systems are doing for AI art? They're taking thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of photos and mashing them together, trying to recombobulate them into something that formulates into a visual thing that we think is appealing. That is the issue. Because you can say it looks like yours, but how do you prove it? Out of 1,000 samples, let's just use 1,000,000 to make your life even more complex. Out of 1,000,000 samples that this AI system used, how does one prove this is actually theirs? What if it's actually taken 0.00001% from yours and 0.0002% from someone else's? Is it more rightfully theirs than it is yours? This is the hard part. Because AI systems aren't just taking your image and being like, oh, I want to copy this. It's taking millions of images. It's taking so much data. And that's the part that this is where it gets complicated, because by law, you can be like, I see you guys mentioning signatures. By law, you can be like, hey, look, there's my signature. But by law, you need to be able to prove that this artwork as an entirety, is a duplicate of yours in order for you to claim it. Now, you could say like, I don't want any sort of databases using my images. Fair enough. Here's the problem. And I know this because I've talked to several lawyers now. If you do not want your data being used on the internet, do not put it on the internet, because you will use far more resources to try to prove that they're using your stuff than for you just to not post it. For example, this is the cool part about this thing. For example, your phones literally listen to you all the time. It literally listens to you all the time. It changes your advertisement ID. It changes who your advertisers are. It changes literally what you see in advertisements. It listens to you all the time. It runs your voice, the things you say, the things you talk about through AI systems all the time. Are you going to be able to prove that they have your voice somewhere? If you requested your data, they're not going to send it to you, because it's not on their onus to prove that they have your data. It's on you to prove that they have it. That is the hard part, because the onus isn't on individual companies to disclose what they're doing. That's all proprietary. They can do whatever they want because you bought the service. That's what they can. That's their prerogative. It is on you in the legal system. I don't agree with it, but this is the reality of it. It is on you in the legal system to prove that someone took your data that you put out into the world. And most of you don't know this, but in your terms of service, in Instagram, whatever platform you're on, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you post your content, even things like if you bought your own website, made your own website, GoDaddy, your host service owns parts of it. They legitimately can take your stuff and sell it to someone else, and their hands are scot-free. That's how scary things are. You can literally walk around on camera here. Someone could take my face and deep fake it to someone else. I can't do anything about it because I'm on Twitch's service. And Twitch has the prerogative to use my content, my face, my literal face, in any way they want. And they could sell it. They could do everything. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not gonna make assumptions, but it is in their prerogative to use my content in however way they want. And they could sell the data. They could use the data in some sort of AI system. They can do whatever they want with it. And this in lies the problem. To try to hold everything to yourself while at the same time trying to release content. And I'm not here to argue what's right and what's wrong. I'm not here to say like the companies are right and people are wrong, or people are right and companies are wrong. I'm just stating that this is the reality of what's happening. This is the world we live in. And anytime we put anything out into the world, anytime we breathe, we exhale CO2, we put that out into the world. Anything we put out into the world is becoming more and more free game. Not because it's right or because that's the new norm, but because it's becoming harder and harder to prove. Before, when you had an idea, you put it out in the world, you put your stamp on it, boom, baby. It is almost nigh impossible for someone else to take your work and copy it. Because you can be like, hey, you know what? This person's linked to this person. This is my friend over here. They had access to this. And then bada bing, bada boom, they're already doing the same thing as me on the internet. It's easier to prove back then. Nowadays, for example, there's another AI system out there. I'm not gonna say the name because I don't want to get in trouble. But they literally allow you to request your data. They literally allow you to take out your marketing ID and request data on what they've collected from you. Guess how long it takes? They've got a queue for over 7 years from so many people. You have to wait 7 years to get your data. And unfortunately, the legal system doesn't push them to do anything faster. They have no legal obligation to get your data right away. 7 years. And in that 7 years, things are going to change. And they know it. We all know it. And that's the problem. But I want you all to know the reality of what's happening in the world right now. That's why this talk was so important to me, because it's an issue. It's an issue that we're going to face. And it's scary, but also something that we need to prepare for. The really important thing that I wanted to say was I actually had an opportunity to go to a school and do a little TED Talk. And this is really cool because this is what I really love to do. I love to like educate. I love to teach. I love to expand people's minds. I like to, broaden people's experiences and knowledge so that we kind of all on the same page. Now, I got to experience a really cool way to talk to a TED Talk for kids. It was awesome. And so I want to bring this up to you guys. And this is going to affect all of us. So buckle in here. When we were growing up as kids, okay, guys, as kids, when we were growing up, I'm 30. So everyone knows my age. As kids, as we're growing up, we were taught to do long division. Math, long division, like 500 sum divided by 3, whatever the long division is. And we were taught to do this thing with this little bar, right? You guys remember that? The little bar thing, the number, and then the carry the ones and the remainders and stuff? We were taught to do that as kids because that was our tool. Very important. That long division method was our tool because we didn't have anything else. As we grew up and became teenagers, our new tool became computers, i.e. calculators. And I specifically remember in high school math, instead of doing things by hand, because what they used to do at NASA was they used to chart orbits by hand, by calculating trajectories and interception points. It was all done by hand or done by a very strong supercomputer that's ultimately weaker than our phones today. In high school, we learned to use microcomputers. I want to call them microcomputers, but they're really just basic calculators to do math, linear algebra, for example, or to graph things. The premise of our learning shifted from learning how to use long division tools on paper to learning how to properly use a calculator. So we shifted from one tool to another tool. And our learning didn't become entirely focused on how do we draw a graph. It became more focused on how do we use this calculator properly to draw a graph. And as I worked into a university, I felt, I thought to myself, wow, this is great. We have calculators now. And then automatic calculators and like things like Wolfram Alpha started coming out of the woodwork. And so my classes literally shifted from, hey, how do I use a calculator to how do I use systems like Wolfram Alpha properly? How do I add the perfect parentheses? How do I format my inputs so that it spits out the right equation? Because it became less and less and less about learning the concepts and more about the efficiency at which we can arrive at the answer, because everyone had access to it. And therein lies the problem for the next generation. The next generation is in a world where AI systems are prevalent. And I was talking to these kids and I was like, how many of you guys use like filters? How many of you guys have tried this AI GPT thing where it writes you essays? How many of you have used AI art to make artwork for your classes? profile pictures, whatever. I'm predicting that in the coming years, students, especially the next generation, are going to be shifting from learning how to use basic systems like Wolfram Alpha to learning specifically how to input properly into an AI system to arrive at an answer. And that's the scary thing. We shift our focus from tool to tool to tool to tool because our technology and as advanced and our society needs us to continue to advance in order to progress, in order to keep up with everything that's happening. And so students are living in this world where they aren't doing long division. I went to a school and I asked them, what do you guys know what long division is? They're like, what the heck is long division? Why do you use these lines on a piece of paper when you just have Wolfram Alpha? It doesn't make sense to them because they're living and they're growing up in a world where they have access to technology that we never had access to. Literally, they need to learn how to use their tools properly as opposed to what's happening within the tools. And that's like one of the things that kids nowadays will have to navigate. I guarantee you guys, there's going to be a class one day. It says how to input, how to formulate inputs properly. It's going to be an entire thing because that's the world they live in. For example, back in high school, it was impossible to stop people from going home, taking their homework home, like, oh, I'm going to do long division at home, and just using a calculator because they're going to do it anyways. So instead of preventing them from using the technology, schools adopted this whole thing of teaching kids how to use the technology properly. So that you see classes using calculators and they're like, how do you input things into calculators? It's literally part of the class now. AI systems are going to be the same way. It's literally going to be a part of the class. It's going to be so important. And they're going to use it to write essays. They're going to use it to do research faster and more efficient than we ever could as humans and more accurate as well. They're going to be able to do things that we never could do. Calculate the trajectory of a small rocket to land on the moon, probably minutes for them. That is the scary thing, and also the part that we as humans in a society need to start considering. We need to start considering the infrastructure and the laws affecting this because this is going to be the future. We need to talk about the implications of AI art. Who owns it? How do you justify copyright laws now? And as much as we fight it, it is just a part of human evolution now. No, there's no way for you to to claim something just because you see it now. Back then, absolutely, because what did we have? We had our tools that we had, i.e., our eyes and our monitors. Not anymore. It's becoming more and more important. We start teaching people, not just kids, but people, about these systems and how to use them, how to ethically navigate these waters that we literally have never gone through before as a human society. I love questions like this because it gives me an opportunity to kind of put my thoughts in order here for you guys so that we're all kind of on the same page. It is my responsibility to broaden my understanding. As a developer specifically, it is my responsibility to broaden my understanding of how this affects humans and how this changes the way we live. It sometimes honestly terrifies me. I grew up in an age where it's just like things are more basic. And now we're thrown into this world where things are crazy. And I can foresee literally the next 5-10 years to be completely different than anything we've ever seen. And it's exciting, but also terrifying. So I encourage all of you to ask questions. I only know so much, but every time I learn something new, I always love to share it with you guys. I encourage you guys to always question things and ask things. And if you're curious about things, ask them, because it's conversations like this that we need to keep open so that we're all on the same page. Because when the problems do arise, and they will arise, it's going to be new waters. And the worst thing that can happen is that we go in there with some ignorance or a lack of understanding or just like a neglect to learn. And I think that's the scary part, because what triggers a lot of the fear right now, a lot of the anxiety and animosity against these things that are happening, is our lack of understanding. That's really the big problem. And I don't say this lightly to be like artists don't know what the heck's going on. I'm sure tons and tons of them know what's going on, but I can definitely say a lot of people out there see this as change that affects them in a negative way, change that is hard to understand. And all they see is the surface level stuff, and they don't really see the ramifications of what's happening as a whole. And I feel like if you're an artist out there, specifically because this was mentioned by a question for an artist, and you see an AI system taking your artwork, I implore you to broaden your thought process, because there is nothing you or I can do to help change the situation. I know it sucks that like an AI system is taking my artwork and stealing my style and stuff. I can only imagine what that feels like. But there are two ways to figure things out. One, complain. And two, to understand and grow. Just like kids nowadays who are growing up in this world, they don't have an option to complain. They can't be like, no, I'm not using AI systems. I'm going back to pencil and paper because that's what my dad did. They don't have that option because literally every other student is going to be using AI systems to do things, and they're going to be stuck in the woodwork. They're going to be stuck in 1999, while everyone else is in the year 2024, and that's the problem. So kids don't have the option to be like, I want it my way because that's what I'm used to. Kids are thrown into the world where it says, holy crap, guys, how the heck am I supposed to do this? And that's what we're all kind of going through. How the heck are we going to keep up with this? How the heck are we going to navigate these waters? We just don't know anything about it. It's scary. It's different. But instead of trying to fight this alone and try to go against the current, I encourage you to broaden your understanding. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something cool. Maybe, just maybe, you can even utilize AI systems to help you out. But it's much easier in life if we're on the same page and we're all there to help each other out and understand these waters together, as opposed to being like, I don't want change. I just sort of read an article on how Gen Z is failing keeping up with technology right now. Yeah, we're not going to be able to keep up with it. And that's the thing with AI systems too. Technology is doing this, right? Humans are kind of doing this. Like we're keeping up, but we're struggling. The difference between the human line and the technology line, that bridged gap there, is what AI systems do. It accelerates our learning. It accelerates the rate at which we can do things to keep up with technology. That's what it's there for. You see like space age movies where it's like computer systems are flying for us, not because we can't fly, but because we had about 1,000 different things to calculate all at once, and the system just does it faster and more efficient. Autopilot systems, same thing. Automatic flying drones, same thing. A human could do it. It would take a little bit more time and a little bit more slower, but an AI system, like that, it can calculate trajectory, air force speeds, triangulate locations, literally a whole bunch of different things all at once. And that's how we bridge the technology gap between what humans can do and what technology is at right now. But like, is the schools actually going to change the entire system to teach their stuff? Yes, because teachers are struggling. As a teacher, you can walk into a classroom and be like, kids, here's your homework for the day. Write an essay on Abraham Lincoln. What are they going to do? They're going to go home. They're going to use an AI system. It's going to write their entire essay for them. And that's it. They're going to come back to school and say, I'm done. And what are you going to do? Yell at them? You're like, hey, you couldn't use an AI system. Prove it. Prove that I wrote this by myself. And so students and teachers clash in this regard, just like how artists and AI systems and AI art is clashing in this regard. So teachers now have to prove, instead of like studying and trying to teach students, they're spending most of their time trying to prove that a student did this and not a machine. Now, instead of flowing against the flow and trying to be resistant, like I said with artists, it's more imperative that teachers say, okay, I understand that students have this tool. How do we as teachers get them to A, double check their work, B, get them to get it so that it's right, so that they can keep up with the myriad of other students that are using the same thing, and B, how do we make sure that they understand what they're doing? The implications of using a system like this. These are the questions that teachers ask me. These are the questions and concerns that teachers have in this regard, because they can't spend all their time trying to pick apart an essay to try to prove that a machine did this and not a student for every student. Impossible. Just like artists can't pick apart every pixel to prove that a machine generated AI system for art used their artwork. Scary, I know. But that's why I really appreciate these teachers reaching out, because they see it. They're like, oh, you know what? This is going to be the future. How do we as teachers do better for our students who have access to this technology? Because they grew up just like us. Pen and paper, calculator, TI-83. This is all new to them too. Which is why I think these teachers are really great too. Shout out to the teachers. You guys are freaking awesome, because I see the gears turning, and I see how important this is, how important your students are, for you to just even reach out to try to learn and do better for them. So shout out to you guys. You guys are literally amazing. I can't wait to help you guys out even further with whatever I can. If all freelance artists on ArtStation stop being able to make a living and have to quit art, where are the AI training sets going to get their fodder from? Cerulean, very good question. Here's the thing. If you wanted to deepfake me, you could literally go to all my Twitch streams, cut out my face from literally millions of different frames, and make a deepfake of me pretty well. Because I've looked literally, there you go, here you go, deepfake. Take all my data. It's out there now. If you make art, not even on ArtStation, you make it on Instagram. You take a photo of it on Instagram. Your friend takes a photo of it and shares it. Literally, the world's at the internet's mercy. Everything you do is literally at the mercy of the internet, unless you're not on the internet.
Welcome.
Back in the day, paper and canvas artists used to be super popular. There used to be many auctions. There used to be many physical places to go view art. Since then, if you want to be a successful artist, you need to be on the internet because it gives you access to a broader audience. Be an artist, make art on canvas, put in store. 20th century, want to be an artist, make art, put on internet so world can see. 2030, for example. Want to be an artist, navigate and use AI systems to help you become better artists and make more content faster to reach a bigger audience. That's my prediction, but the world is changing. And that's what my key point is. The world is changing because technology is advancing. And if you took an olden day artist and you try to put them in today's world, they would not be a popular artist. They would not have any traction. And it's just simply because the world has changed. So are AI not going to have any fodder? No, there's going to be tons of fodder because there's going to be tons of people who want to be artists. And if you want to be an artist, these are the things you need to do. Just like me, if I want to be a content creator, I need to make content. Unfortunately, I can't just go out on the street and start live streaming on the street to just like people walking by. As funny as that would be, and as embarrassing as that would be, it's impossible for me to grow as a content creator in that regard. I have to change one day. I don't know when, I don't know how, but when whatever comes up, I'll even have to change. If I want to be a developer, I have to start using systems in a new way. I have to start learning how to use tools properly. Things are going to change for me too. I'm scared because I'm used to sitting down with a keyboard and but maybe in the future, I gotta sit down, plug my brain in, and start thinking. Maybe in the future, I need to learn how to prompt into an AI system for it to write code for me. My world's gonna change too. And if I want to survive in it, I have to adapt. Just like kids, just like anybody else. So either people adapt and survive, or resist and eventually adapt and then survive. There's not a whole lot to it. That is going to be the TED Talk conversation of the day. If you have anything you'd love to share, and if you have any insight, if you have any questions, feel free to ask it in chat here. I'd love to answer them. Or you can just join my Discord. There is the link for you guys. Feel free to join the Discord. Have any questions? I think these are really important, and I love talking about them. I love sharing things I've learned, so that we're always able to do a little better. We're always able to learn and love and do a little better in the world. And maybe, just maybe, it'll make our lives a little bit more simple, a little less scary. Like, let me know if you guys like these sort of like little TED Talky moments here. It's not my part in the world to try to tell you how to think or what to think or what's right and what's wrong. I think it's more important that we open the conversation up so that people maybe learn something new or have a change in perspective or critically think about the things that are happening in the world. Almost be your own teacher. You know? But sometimes it's good to hear.